And welcome to another webisode of All Politics Are Local. I'm WSAV digital reporter John Dowding. Every week we take the time to break down the local impact of news coming from Washington, D.C. with one of our reporters from Capitol Hill. Let's jump right in. New developments from over the weekend. The Trump administration announces the U.S. will begin to withdraw the remaining forces from Syria. In an interview on CBS's Face the Nation, Defense Secretary Mark Esper said roughly 1,000 troops will leave as safely and as quickly as possible. President Trump is standing by the decision to withdraw U.S. forces as Turkish troops begin to increase their military operations into the region. Democrats running for president have already expressed their concern for this move from the president.
What in God's name is this man doing? What is he doing to our security? What is he doing to NATO? What is he doing? It is a shame. It's shameful what he's done.
And here to discuss and break down why this all matters is News 3's Washington, D.C. correspondent Kelly Myers. Just this morning, Senator Lindsey Graham announced on Fox and Friends he'll be meeting with the president later today to discuss Syria. So Kelly, what have some of the other lawmakers have been saying about this as well?
Well, thanks, John. And it's interesting, as we were talking about a little bit before we came on air, that this is something that's getting pushed back from both sides, Democrat and Republican. And like you just mentioned, South Carolina Senator Lindsey Graham meeting with the president today. He's one of the biggest allies for President Trump here in Congress, and to see him pushing back against the president is an interesting turn of events. So let's take it back and review what we've seen in this past week. We've seen that President Trump decided to remove or withdraw these U.S. troops from northeast Syria, and since then we've seen Turkey start to go into a part of northeast Syria there in their Operation Peace Spring. They're trying to make this safe zone where they can return some of the Syrian refugees safely into Syria. But with that, Kurdish allies see this as leaving our U.S. ally of the Kurds in to fend for themselves is how they're feeling. So that's this separation that we've seen, and a lot happened over this past week. And the vocal response from people here in Congress, from these lawmakers, has been resounding in disagreeing with President Trump on his decision. And like you said, Senator Lindsey Graham going to meet with the president. He announced his bill, bipartisan bill with Senator Van Hollen from Maryland, that they're pushing through here in Congress to increase sanctions on Turkey or to bring these about. And also the president is saying that he now is supporting Congress in that, and that in fact they're ready to, I believe that Secretary Mnuchin, the Treasury Secretary, said, the quote, they're ready to go at a moment's notice to put sanctions against Turkey. So it's interesting to see how this has changed over the past week very rapidly and seeing where it goes from here, and very interested to see what comes out of that conversation between Senator Lindsey Graham and the president at the White House today.
It's definitely going to be an interesting conversation. And I mean, just this morning, Lindsey Graham tweeted something, correct? What he was talking about, or at least over the weekend, he tweeted about his response to the president's move to withdraw troops from Turkey. So can you tell us a little bit about what the senator said?
So at first last week, and I believe we have the tweet there to show, that there was a disaster in the making, calling the president's decision and what would happen from that stemming from last week. He tweeted that on October 7th, and then it changed as President Trump began to hear what Congress was doing, to hear what Graham and Van Hollen were putting forward, and then he said that the president being interested in increasing sanctions or putting sanctions on Turkey was a game changer. He said that in a tweet on Sunday. So it's interesting to see, as we said leading up to their conversation today, if they will impose these sanctions, what's going to happen with Congress. Of course, lawmakers come back later tonight and into tomorrow from their recess. So interesting to see. I think Syria is going to be front and center as we head through this next week. And
especially, too, because Turkish troops they had that close call this weekend. If you remember, you know, the Turkish troops launched a missile that landed pretty close to the U.S. troops that are still in Syria. And that kind of shook everybody a little bit. And I think that freaked out a lot more people on Capitol Hill, seeing that, you know, our troops aren't necessarily in a safe area, and the fact that we're withdrawing them, it just means that we are, you know, decreasing the amount of resources and tools and that we have on the ground. And they even said that one of the main motivations for the president to withdraw troops was because Turkish troops were cutting off some of the roads that U.S. supplies typically traveled on to get to these different troops that are stationed there in Syria. So it's definitely, like you said, it's an escalating situation that's going to continue to develop as we go on, as well as the many other issues going on down on the Hill. Is there anything else that any of our local representatives may have said, Kelly, that you noticed over the last couple days, or everybody's still getting back from recess?
I was keeping a close eye on it, and I did a story filing on what's happening in Syria. And of course, I heard from Marco Rubio also saying that this was a dangerous slope to go down. Generally, the response from Republicans and Democrats throughout the country has been that this isn't a good call, that they don't agree with what the president decided last Sunday, and they want to see either a reversal. But I think the big question is now, too, even if there is a reversal, is the damage already done? Is it too late to go back? So I think it's looking forward. I've definitely been keeping an eye on South Carolina Senator Lindsey Graham so far, but I will keep an eye out and be tweeting out if we hear from any other local lawmakers as well.
Fantastic. Well, let's shift gears a little bit. Continue to stay on South Carolina. So South Carolina Capitol reporter Georgia Godfrey spoke with the state's Forestry Commission in the last previous days. They said they're expecting to see a busy wildfire season, and climate change may be playing a big role in that. And in September, the Forestry Commission responded to more than 200 wildfires, which is a drastic increase from the average 89 wildfires for the same month in previous years. And the increase in activity is why the commission is feeling concerned.
We are brought in some expertise from the Federal Forest Service and our partners to help us prepare some messaging and some fire data to help us make decisions. We have our airplanes flying more frequently to detect fires because we can find the fires smaller, they're easier to stop, and less time is involved and less people are threatened.
So before we head and let you head back up to the Hill while everybody's getting back in D.C., Kelly, let's just touch on this really quickly. You said that Buddy Carter has a pivotal role in maybe trying to create some new policy to be able to help tame these wildfires.
Yeah, exactly. He's a member of this Congressional Committee on Global Warming, and it's interesting to see how his position may have changed, or how he believes that climate change is real, and he's looking at ways to combat it in the district, as well as also trying to find ways that it doesn't affect the local economy. So he's trying to bridge how they can proceed with trying to make a significant change while also keeping local businesses and the economy thriving in that sort of way. So it's interesting to follow his developments on this from here in Congress. So we'll definitely be keeping an eye out as we go forward, as that is a very big topic here as well. And you're seeing that, of course, on the presidential campaign trail for a lot of these 2020 Democratic candidates discussing it as well. So I think it's definitely going to be a platform and a policy change for some of these lawmakers, and we'll be keeping an eye out for that as well.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much, Kelly, for being here and speaking with us. As always, it's a pleasure, and we look forward to seeing you next week.
Thank you so much.
And News 3 is your local election headquarters, so remember to stay with WSAV News 3 on air and online for the very latest. Thank you again for watching. I'm John Dowding. We'll see you again next week on All Politics Are Local.